Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, staff and students and friends of Trinity Laban, and welcome to a little show we are calling CoLab TV, A Reflection. At this time of year, we would prefer to be showing off the CoLab project somewhere like Blackheath Halls, but today the best we can do is on the streets of London, in front of the wonderful King Charles Court. As we're all aware, it's been a confusing and tumultuous period, so tonight we're planning on showing some CoLab projects that focus on reflection. It's fantastic to have so many of you with us today. Make sure to say where you are, what snacks you have in the chat. We're going to start off proceedings with a group called Ellucidate, who are exploring how and why we dream. And we're then going to have a look at what the asynchronous music group have been up to over CoLab.
Hiya, my name is Jolie Gibson. I was the project coordinator for number 52, Ellucidate. I proposed it originally because I was interested in collaborating on an idea, and the idea was to explore the question, why do we dream? And to look at that in a sort of collaborative, intimate way and consider the theories and the psychology and the experiences of dreams. To experiment with that question, because I mean, within dreamscapes and the conversations around dreams, there's so much material, and so I thought it would provide really great stimulus for a project. Luckily, people were interested, and Ellucidate ended up having me and 4 dancers, a composer, 3 pianists, a bassoon, a soprano, a cello, and a viola. So it was a real mix of skills, which was so fun to create with, really. I think in terms of the final project, we really tried to bring sort of traces forward of that dream world. We'd been discussing and debating around it the whole week. So then we had quite a lot of range towards the end of the project to kind of work with, because it has so much subconscious potential. We looked into utopian freedom, the illusions of escapism, and then the sort of madness of the lucid state, and then also the kind of distorted, uncomfortable nightmares that you can get in REM sleep. So we were really considering different stages of dreams and how they affect you throughout the night. I knew that we were aiming to make something around 3 minutes. It ended up that we had so much material by the end of it. We were all saying we could extend it to like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. We ended up with voice memos and sort of improv sessions and memories and like mind maps that could have been used for text, and concepts that really we could have expanded on further, because we ended up with quite distinct themes that kind of ran through the piece. There was such a vast kind of range of approaches to things, but that meant that the material was way more interesting than I could have hoped, because the ideas, when I would pop into breakout rooms and watch what people had done and that kind of thing, it was so impressive to see that they'd taken it to this place that I never could have imagined we were going to go to. And you had this kind of range of opinion, and that's really helpful creatively as well. And that's why we ended up getting these really kind of wacky, sort of strange or beautiful ideas because of that diversity. In the creative process, I think that the stickiest point was sort of working out, we had so many ideas and you know, we'd started creating material and everyone had such great plans for the work, but the actual, you know, how do we make this? What do we actually want this to end up being? I think that was the most difficult point to decide. Because of that great diversity of opinion, it also means that people are sort of polarized on what they want, and you have to find like a middle ground. But we did get through it, we worked through it, and it turned out that once people sort of all shared their ideas and their plans, and everyone kind of did diagrams of how they structurally wanted it to go along, that a lot of the ideas were very similar and that we could create something that sort of factored the majority of those in. One of our tutors, Gwyn Pritchard, offered some advice, which was to simplify the idea down to its essence, and that ended up being this kind of central pairing, which was taking the disjointed and the dark and looking at that, and also looking at the free and the light, because when we sort of reviewed people's experiences, because we recorded memories that we had of different dreams, there was this contrast between very dark, stressful dreams that left you quite disturbed, and then, you know, the sort of sweet, nostalgic or freeing dreams that allowed you to do whatever you wanted and escape into your own kind of desires. That was what filled everyone with so much pride when we were listening to the composition together, was knowing that every single beat and every single string and every single voice was one of us and was someone from our group. And there's something so special about creating something that is completely yours, and there's no copyrighted material, there's nothing else in it, it's just completely your own creation. And I think everyone got really excited about that whilst we were making it.
And I've had 2 accounts of
I had the young child that started
but they both were reoccurring, whatever you have experienced, reoccurring dream, just being covered by too much. So I was just seeing colours by too much, and I just had so much, and I just had terrified spiders. I was absolutely terrified of spiders, especially that was really terrifying. It kept happening.
We're going to jump right back into the action with a project by Joshua Kay called Songs of the Oak. Really interesting project looking at nature and vocal music. We're then going to move right back in with the Yoruba project.
Oppressive. Necklace. Will spill its gill, no fin. Now gape, shape, air, filling, trilling, in a ravine. Squawk of magpies, squeaks of passerines, high, high, high in the oak. Zoom, 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 see, 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 see. Cool, cool. Drones the metal bird, its blades whirring. Shadows pattern on the ground. Splot, splot.
Hello, little one.
The tarmac. Flick of sunlight.
ẹnu rẹ̀ àbí èpè, ó ń tanná wájà tó yẹ kó relé. Ọ̀yà tó ń pera rẹ̀ lájànàkú, kí ẹbí rẹ̀ múra ìsìnkú. Ṣọ́ra kó má lọ jìyà, ṣọ́ra kó má lọ tẹ́. Ṣọ́ra kó má lọ jìyà, ṣọ́ra kó má lọ tẹ́. Mo ní kó ṣọ́ra. Ṣọ́ra, 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 ṣọ́ra. Dìgbòlugi, dìgbòluyan, kò jẹ́ ká mọ èwo lájà o. Dìgbòlugi, dìgbòluyan, kò jẹ́ ká mọ èwo lájà o. Àtẹ́wọ́ dìgbòlugi, dìgbòluyan, kò jẹ́ ká mọ èwo lájà o. Wọ́n ní dìgbòlugi, dìgbòluyan, kò jẹ́ ká mọ èwo lájà o. Àbínú fùfù alákọ̀rí, olójú líle àgbéná kárí. Gbogbo ẹnu rẹ̀ àbí èpè, ó ń tanná wájà tó yẹ kó relé. Ọ̀yà tó ń pera rẹ̀ lájànàkú, kí ẹbí rẹ̀ múra ìsìnkú. Ṣọ́ra kó má lọ jìyà, ṣọ́ra kó má lọ tẹ́. Ṣọ́ra kó má lọ jìyà, ṣọ́ra kó má lọ tẹ́. Ṣọ́ra, 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 ṣọ́ra.
Ah, the Thames. I think we're about due a break now, so that gives me the perfect opportunity to promote the brand new CoLab YouTube channel. Hundreds of students have taken part in CoLab this year and produced around 100 3-minute long clips of their projects, which will be going live almost immediately after this production. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe and ring that notification bell so that you don't miss a project. We're going to be playing a short montage now of what we've been up to this year, so make sure to have a watch of that, but also get a snack, take a break, and we'll see you in 5.
We cannot continue to pollute the atmosphere, poison the ocean, and exhaust the land.
Civis amari,
notre parlement. L'eau nous façonne, l'air nous émeut, le feu nous transpire.
single word that can wreak havoc in the hearts of many, whilst terrifying others.
The messages we share and direct will be sparse and create distance in its purity.
Hollow, with only your rustling waterproof coat.
Later, I started composing a piano piece using...
Gender is self-identity.
This is a you, and this is its subject.
Via the right-hand side of your screen.
It's always you.
18 changes that. Inability to reason with teachers so soon.
My first dream memory.
Squawk of magpies, squeaks of...
I mean, this is a constant state of change, losing the point of everything at one point.
Our next project, Breaking the Binary, looks at how gender roles and gender itself can be broken and bent. We'll then be looking at bringing poetry to life, from paper to performance.
Gender is self-identity. It's personal.
Is it called Lego?
Gender is
not being able to look at like particular toys or particular clothes. My experience of gender has definitely kind of changed as I've gotten older.
There's a lot more to it than just boy girl.
I watched a show. The leading actor is a man with very short hair.
Is performing gender harmful or informative?
The issue is the assumption that
just experiment more with gender.
We all conform to a binary that doesn't necessarily exist.
Who are we performing for?
Everyone.
I don't really know how to start this, but
everyone
should do what they feel comfortable doing.
Playing around with these rules.
It's really easy to deconstruct once you start questioning.
I felt it was very limiting.
I think I remember it not sitting right with me from quite early.
Can we perform gender, and who are we performing it for?
Or why people are scared of breaking things and letting new things evolve.
With a lack of binary gender,
and I connect how I look,
there's a lack of expectation, and so it's almost like anything anything goes.
I do.
How can you break or challenge society's assumptions about gender in your day-to-day life?
I would say my experience with gender has changed over time quite drastically.
I don't know how to answer that.
Offer the potential of more complex characters and
Just
less
more
reliance
exciting.
on
Really?
tropes and stereotypes and the assumptions that we've held for so long.
How can she break up the image?
I don't know what I'm saying.
Implement realism.
A hero, for example, would wear pink.
I think the more I question gender, the more I analyse it, the harder it is to define.
We perform for ourselves.
Kind of conform to it.
It's like a security blanket.
The point at which we seem to take issue is where that does restrict or impose a set of values on someone that they just don't align with.
Like, what? I will help out. I'm strong. I'm like tall enough to do that.
This is an important conversation.
That there is much more than just what we assume there is.
I know we got to a place where we kind of agreed you can perform femininity and masculinity, but can you actually perform
They don't
gender?
quite care about how you look like.
Might make people think about what they see.
But like, I'm also performing it a little for myself.
Should you? Can you? What can you use it for?
Many of those questions don't have an answer, but also how that is kind of brilliant.
There'd be lots of stories that would go unchanged.
It would give more opportunity for complex characters to see more than just kind of boy-girl, and explore more the kind of the characteristics, the background of the characters.
Liberation.
Kind of, to what extent can you perform masculinity?
Perform for other people and do what is expected.
Do we know what we're built for? How are you performing gender on stage? Do we feel equipped or daily life to safely challenge ideas of gender?
How can every single person
This really like disgusting
in the
villain
world who sees the world differently, themselves differently.
Why should it make sense? Gender doesn't make sense.
Their own individual perspective
Where
on everything.
did
like
gender
how
come
can
from, or the
every single
binary,
person
maybe?
Fit inside
Can we perform gender?
Singular boxes.
When are people going to catch up?
And plenty more questions.
And what would the world look like without the binary?
What are other people going to do?
Separate from gender expression, what is gender identity and what is mine? Because I think the more I've thought this all week, the more we discuss and explore, the more you start to deconstruct the idea, the concept of gender binary, and it's sort of, we keep coming back to what is gender, and I think that will be a never-ending discussion, importantly, and I think that's worth everyone questioning at some point.
I'm trying to think of more examples, but I don't have any good ones at the moment.
Hello, lovely to see you guys. Yeah, so we've just watched your video and it's, yeah, really good. Do you want to just tell me a bit about how you found the experience of the collaborative experience of CoLab and putting this together?
I'll start. I found this year was very different, the creative process, mainly because it was online, and personally I've never led anything online before, but I felt like we were all kind of open to it being different, which I was scared that we wouldn't be open to it, but it was. And I just really appreciated that it wasn't as maybe as practical as CoLab usually is, but that was okay.
We've just seen this video, and you mentioned in your video about performing gender, and I'm just wondering if you feel that performing gender on stage and in every life is different.
I would kind of say it's an interesting one to look at, because kind of when it comes to gender on stage, it is as performative as real life, but it's a different kind of performance. Because I remember during our project, we did one bit where we basically just kind of people watched. And I remember before that, I had kind of notions in my head of kind of how male presenting people and female presenting people would walk. And it was like hardly ever met. Like none of those stereotypes were there. But on stage, I feel like it's more likely for those to be there, just because that's what kind of society has in its mind and that's how it translates.
We discussed earlier in the week whether you can perform gender, and if you can and you do, who it's for. Is it for yourself? Is it for the public? And especially on stage, we were discussing, we got into a really interesting discussion about, can you perform maleness or femaleness, or perform gender itself? Because I think we came to the conclusion that we can perform masculinity or femininity and kind of the traditional or stereotypical sense of that, but it was really interesting to kind of raise these questions that don't have a straight answer about whether or not you can perform and how you can use that on stage in a character, but then also in everyday life.
So there have for centuries been cross-gender roles in theatre. That's quite often portrayed through clothing and makeup. And what role do you guys think that clothing has in showing gender?
So earlier in the week, we did a practical exercise where we had to wear different clothes and see how that made us feel and how it changed our movements and stuff like that. And then we kind of came back and we talked about it. And it was really interesting because there were some things that some people were like, oh yes, because this article of clothing was, for example, flowy, I felt this way and I moved this way. Whereas other people kind of were like, oh, well, when I wore that, I felt this way and not how you felt. And it kind of like, it kind of proved that even clothing doesn't have a necessary, like clothing doesn't conform to a gender binary.
Well, I know something, because we had a brief chat the other day about this, but I know you've been talking about this quite a lot and wondered what thoughts you have all come up with. Do you think breaking the binary within theatre is about using the opportunities we have to break it, or to create new ones?
One of the things that we kind of brought up at the beginning of the week was the kind of statement like, oh, anyone can play anything. And I was thinking about that, and I was kind of thinking in terms of like when you do gender swapped characters and like an all-female cast or an all-male cast or whatever, when you have these things, yes, if it's adding to the show and to the production and to the point you're trying to make in that story, then go ahead and do it. But there does need to be more chances for gender non-conforming and trans characters, because trans performers and gender non-conforming performers aren't telling their story yet, and they're telling other people's stories, which they're allowed to do, but they need to tell their story, and until then, not everyone can play anything.
Yeah, I was going to add to one of the kind of exercises we did during the week was we were assigned like 2 pieces, and I had Oklahoma and we kind of explored whether or not we can change gender in those musicals. And we found that actually in some instances, yes, there's a lot to be gained from it. And in others, it was just merely swapping, and there wasn't much to gain in terms of the storyline, the complex characters, and kind of actually implementing a sense of real in it. So that's kind of a term that came up a lot, was real and realism.
Cool. Well, at this point, I think we're going to have to leave it here, I'm afraid, and get on with the rest of our evening. But it's been lovely to chat to you all. And thank you so much for having a chat with me. It's been great. And it sounds like you had a lot of fun. So, yeah. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
I'll write about it later.
I'll write about it later.
I'll write about it later.
I'll write about it later. The sun sparkles in the horizon of your eyes. Hiding behind your skin grows a tree touching the sky. Fading flowers melt away in wonder. When spring is over and autumn leads to winter, where will you be? I know the autumn by how it smells.
The early morning scene between night and day. Shelves for words, a scaffold to rest them on. Words need parameters before they can be held in your hands. Too vast, too beautiful. I know the autumn by how it smells.
I will pick up my tender bones. I will brush the cobwebs off of the boxes of light in my mind, and I will open them again.
Hello and welcome back to the Laban building, our wonderful and award-winning dance faculty building. We're going to jump right back into the action with Folk, Identity and the Modern World, a group that's been looking at how folk music has helped people get through difficult periods of time.
Hello, my name is Natasha Hanson. I'm third year BMus classical saxophonist at Trinity Laban. So I was involved in Niall Windas's CoLab called Folk Identity, where we basically looked at different types of folk music from all over the world, mainly Europe. We learnt about all the different types of folk music and how the culture interlinked in essentially what is folk music. Which was really interesting. I learnt a lot from it. I've not had much to do with folk music before. I've played some Irish folk music as my saxophone teacher is Irish. Being Scandinavian, I was very interested in researching more about Scandinavian folk music, of which I did, and it was great fun. And I got to tell others about Scandinavian folk music And likewise, there was a Spaniard in our class and he told us about Spanish folk music, and it was super interesting.
So, what was I pleased with? In particular, the way that the group worked together. It was, coming into this, it was tricky to know how an online format would work. CoLab is such an in-person thing. It's so active and it's so... It's generally so physical. All of a sudden coming online, I didn't know how it was going to work.
The greatest point of this whole project for me was the group project we came together to make. We did a cover of the TikTok phenomenon, The Wellerman.
But the group really took this on board, and despite the limitations of not being in the room together, we did a warm-up every single day, and and everybody got up and had their cameras on, was doing it. You could see everyone was doing the warm-up, and just that community spirit, although it was online, that spirit was still there.
Where the singers came together, they changed the lyrics to make it revolve around COVID and lockdown and what we've all experienced in this past year. And then us musicians came together and sorted out the instrumentals, the harmonies. I was the one doing the audio production for it, which was great fun too. I learned so much.
And, regardless of end products that we get from CoLab, the main thing is that we collaborated and we all worked well together.
It was so much fun to cooperate with other people and have our ideas like bouncing backwards and forwards again. It was great fun. It's exactly what I needed.
What I think is such an important takeaway factor is for us to realise how folk music, this traditional music, relates a lot to our lives now, our current identity. If people go away with this renewed sense of identity and how this is embodied and how we can embody it in folk music, that's what the aim of the project was. And that is something that, if people go away with that, that's the most important thing of all.
Our final act comes courtesy of the wonderful Trinity Laban Musical Theatre faculty, the full version of which will be posted after this production on the brand new CoLab YouTube channel. So here it is, the final act. You don't want to miss it. It's COVID-19, the musical.
Not a distance, nothing could prepare us. A step closer and the fear might disappear. Find me a way, find us a way out of here.
At a distance, life can be more small, but the space between us breaks me more each day. God, free me from these chains, just let me hold his hand again. At distance, at distance.
I love me, not the inside of you.
How?
Run away. Just don't want to stop us.
Okay, I'll be waiting by that tree.
At a
get help here.
Was a boy who looked for love, the world shut down, no hope above. His heart was full, his eyes so bright, he'll wait for one day more. Ah, now a new day comes, still stuck inside an endless gloom. New love is waiting to bloom, we'll wait for one day more. There once was a girl who looked for love, so frightened of the world above. A hopeful gaze met his dark eyes, she'll wait for one day more. Ah, now a new day comes, still stuck inside an endless gloom. New love is waiting to bloom, he'll wait for one day more. A boy meets girl, they fall in love, but fate steps in, the sickness comes. For Romeo and Juliet, they'll wait for one day more. Ah, now a new day comes, still stuck inside an endless gloom. New love is waiting to bloom, we'll wait for one day more. New love is waiting to bloom, we'll wait for one day more.
Survival. When will we find ourselves lost without worry again? You don't need to feel frightful, soon you'll find love again. Remember our story.